The vote counter climbed higher with each passing second. Ruth Hayes watched the holographic display from her seat in the observation gallery, her hands clasped tight enough to turn her knuckles white. 847 glowing marks appeared on one side of the massive sphere. 12 lonely dots blinked on the other. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds that human ears could barely process. "The motion passes," announced the Arbiter, a crystalline being whose voice resonated through every translator in the Grand Assembly. "Earth and all territories within the Sol system are hereby placed under indefinite quarantine protocol. All jump gates connecting to human space will be collapsed within 48 standard hours." Ruth stood slowly, feeling the weight of 300 billion souls pressing down on her shoulders. She activated her speaking pendant, and the noise subsided into an expectant silence. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice steady despite the trembling in her chest. "You condemn us for being too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous." She paused, looking across the thousands of alien faces watching her. "But every action you cite occurred in self-defense or in defense of our allies. We have never struck first. We have never broken a treaty. We have only asked to be treated as equals." High Chancellor Vorn rose from his elevated platform, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. The Salvari leader had orchestrated this vote for months, pulling favors and making promises across dozens of species. "Ambassador Hayes, your words are eloquent as always. But words cannot erase the destruction at Frontier Station 7. Words cannot bring back the Kellen diplomats killed during your military exercises. Your species has proven time and again that it cannot be trusted to operate within civilized boundaries. Those exercises were approved by your own safety commission," Ruth countered. "The Kellen ship entered a restricted zone against explicit warnings. We offered reparations. We offered joint investigations. You refused both. Because excuses are all humanity offers," Vorn replied, his tone sharp. "This council has made its decision. Earth will remain isolated until such time as your species demonstrates it can evolve beyond its violent tendencies. Perhaps in a few thousand years, we will revisit this matter." Ruth wanted to scream. She wanted to overturn the podium and demand they see reason. Instead, she simply said, "History will judge which of us was truly civilized today." Then she turned and walked out of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. 41 hours later, Captain Dan Foster guided his frigate through the last active jump gate leading to Sol System. Behind him, 17 other vessels carried the final wave of humans being expelled from Council space. Some were diplomats like Ruth. Others were traders, scientists, and families who had built lives among the stars. "Gate collapse in 3 minutes," his navigator reported. "All ships have cleared the threshold." Dan stared at the view screen showing Earth's moon growing larger. Home. He had been born on Europa, raised on Mars, and spent his entire adult life in space. Earth was supposed to be just another destination. Now it was the only destination humanity would know. "Send a final transmission to Council space," he ordered. "Let them know we made it through safely." "Sir, they've already closed the communication channels. We're blocked." Of course they were. The Council wanted this clean and final. No lingering connections. No second thoughts. Ruth appeared on the bridge, moving carefully in the reduced gravity. She looked exhausted, older than her 43 years. "How long until we reach Earth?" 6 hours at current speed, Dan replied. "Ambassador, what do we do now?" She settled into the observer's chair and gazed at the blue planet ahead. "We survive, Captain. We adapt. We prove them wrong." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Or we prove them right." The ship's sensors picked up the moment the final jump gate collapsed. A ripple of exotic particles washed across space, and then nothing. The connection was severed. Humanity was alone. Dan brought the fleet into orbit around Earth, where hastily assembled stations already buzzed with activity. The planet below had spent the last 2 months preparing for this moment. Governments had unified. Resources were being pooled. Plans were being made that a message came through from Earth's provisional command. All returning vessels, You are cleared for landing assignments. Welcome home. We have work to do. Ruth stood and straightened her jacket. Captain Foster, thank you for getting us here safely. What will you do now, Ambassador? She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm going to help build something they never expected. They think isolation will weaken us. They think we'll fracture and fade. They're wrong. She moved toward the exit, then paused. Do you know what the last Salvari delegate said to me before I left? He said humanity was like a wild animal that needed to be caged for its own good. What did you say back? Nothing. But I thought about what happens when you cage a wild animal for too long. Ruth's eyes hardened. It either dies or it evolves into something that can break free. Dan watched her leave, then turned back to his crew. Begin landing procedures. And someone give me a direct line to provisional command. If we're going to be stuck in this system, we might as well make it count. Below them, Earth spun in the darkness, cut off from the galaxy that feared it. But humanity had survived ice ages and plagues, wars and disasters. They had clawed their way from caves to the stars against every obstacle nature could throw at them. The Galactic Council had just given them their greatest challenge yet, and humanity did not know how to quit. The sensor array beeped twice before going silent. Junior Technician Rawl frowned at his console aboard the Salvari survey vessel, tapping the display with one of his smaller manipulator limbs. Strange. The readings had shown a massive energy spike from the direction of Sol System, but now there was nothing. Just empty space where humanity supposedly sat in its cage. Sir, I'm getting interference from Sector 77 Beta, he reported to his supervisor. Director Quam barely looked up from his own work. Probably just background radiation from the old jump gate collapse. That was what, 50 years ago now? 52 years, sir. But this signature doesn't match stellar phenomena. It's too organized, too artificial. Then log it and move on. We have 3 more sectors to survey before the cycle ends. Rawl made the notation, but his curiosity lingered. What were the humans doing in there? Did they even still exist? The Council had forbidden any attempts at contact or observation. Earth was meant to be forgotten, a cautionary tale told to younger species about the dangers of unchecked aggression 300 light-years away. Dr. Amy Cross ran her fingers across the data tablet, reading her parents' final logs for the 100th time. The research station hummed quietly around her, most of its inhabitants asleep during the night cycle. She had found these files buried in the archive, marked as personal effects from her mother's estate. Her mother had been human. Her father was Trell. Amy existed in a strange middle ground, belonging fully to neither species. Most of her co-workers treated her well enough, but there was always that distance. That unspoken awareness that half her DNA came from the banished species. The log entry was dated 3 weeks before the quarantine decree passed. Her mother, Dr. Sarah Hayes, had been working on Earth's planetary defense grid when the political situation began deteriorating. If you're reading this, Amy, then I didn't make it back, the recording said. The Council is going to seal us away. I can feel it, but I want you to know something important. Earth isn't going to just sit here and accept this. I've seen the preliminary plans, the mining operations, the construction projects. Your grandmother used to say that humanity's greatest strength was turning obstacles into opportunities. Amy paused the recording and looked out the viewport at the stars. What had her mother meant? What plans? She scrolled forward to the final entry, recorded just days before the gates collapsed. They think we're contained. They have no idea we're preparing. Remember this, Amy. When they finally look towards Sol again, they won't recognize what they see. A sound behind her made Amy jump. Director Hom entered the lab, his bulky form barely fitting through the doorway. The Brecken scientist had supervised Amy since she joined the station 5 years ago. Working late again, Cross? Just reviewing some old data, she replied, closing the tablet. Personal research. His tone suggested he already knew the answer. Family history. Hom sighed, settling his weight against a counter that creaked in protest. I understand your curiosity, but the Council was clear about the protocols. No investigation into Earth or human activities. It's for the best. The best for who? The words came out sharper than Amy intended. For everyone. The galaxy has moved on, Cross. There are 3 new species joining the Council next cycle. Trade routes are expanding. Scientific cooperation is at an all-time high. The last 50 years have been peaceful precisely because humanity was removed from the equation. Amy bit back her response. She had heard this argument before, dressed in diplomatic language. Humanity was the problem. Isolation was the solution. Never mind that half the species now praising the peace had committed atrocities that made human conflicts look like playground disputes. I should get some sleep, she said quietly. After Holm left, Amy reopened the tablet and began searching through her mother's other files. There had to be more. Some clue about what Earth was doing during all these decades of silence. She found it buried in a folder marked Theoretical Propulsion Studies. A single line of text hidden in the metadata. Project Saturn Shield operational. They can't see in anymore. Amy's blood went cold. A shield? Blocking sensor readings? That explained why every attempt to observe Sol system returned nothing but static and scatter particles. Earth wasn't just sitting in isolation. They were hiding something. Meanwhile, in a debris field near what used to be human trading space, a salvage crew made an unexpected discovery. The vessel was small, clearly designed for long-range operation, but had been stripped completely. Every system removed with surgical precision. Nothing remained but the hull itself. Any identification markers? The crew chief asked. None. But the construction matches human design philosophy. Efficient, redundant, over-engineered. That's impossible. Humans haven't been seen in 50 years. This ship is maybe 5 years old based on the material degradation. The crew searched every centimeter but found nothing. No clue about where it had come from or where it had been going. Just an empty shell drifting in space. Reports of similar findings began filtering through independent channels. Ghost ships, traders called them. Vessels that appeared briefly on sensors before vanishing. Always in remote sectors. Always stripped of anything valuable or identifiable. The Council dismissed the reports as hoaxes or misidentified debris. But some people paid attention. Some people wondered what it meant that human-designed ships were appearing in deep space despite the quarantine. Amy cross-wondered too. She stared at her mother's hidden message and made a decision. She would find out what Earth was doing, even if she had to piece it together from fragments and whispers, because something was happening in Sol system. Something the Council didn't want anyone to know. And Amy suspected that when the truth finally came out, it would change everything to 52 years of silence. 52 years of preparation. And nobody in the galaxy was ready for what humanity had become. Every detection grid in the galaxy lit up simultaneously. At first, the analysts thought it was a system malfunction. Nothing could generate a signature that large, that widespread, that impossible. Then the outer colonies started going silent. High Marshal Kess watched the tactical display from his command center on the Torvin homeworld, his 4 hearts beating faster with each update. Red markers spread across the hologram like a plague. 17 colonies gone in the first hour. 23 more reporting contact with unknown hostiles. Give me visual confirmation from any source, he ordered his staff. The first images arrived minutes later. Kess felt his blood chill despite his species' adaptation to extreme temperatures. The things on the screen looked like a twisted fusion of machine and insect, each one the size of a frigate. They moved in perfect coordination, thousands of them stripping entire settlements down to bedrock before moving on. Are they after resources? His tactical officer asked. No. Watch the pattern. Kess highlighted the movement vectors. They're consuming everything. Metal, organic matter, even the atmosphere. And they're replicating. Every hour we're seeing 3% more units than before. A junior officer approached with a datapad. Sir, we've intercepted a partial transmission from Outpost Valen before it went dark. They're calling them the Devourers. Accurate enough. The swarm didn't occupy territory. It erased it, and the leading edge was accelerating toward the populated core worlds. Within days, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Chancellor Prime Veta, great-granddaughter of the Salvari leader who had orchestrated Earth's banishment, presided over chaos. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding action, assigning blame, proposing strategies that died before completion. Our combined fleet numbers over 10,000 warships, argued the Pellan delegate. We can establish a defensive perimeter and accomplish nothing, Kess interrupted, his voice cutting through the noise. I've run the simulations. Our weapons barely damage individual units. Their shields adapt within minutes of any successful hit, and they outnumber us 50 to 1 already. Then what do you suggest, Marshal? Veda asked coldly. Kess took a breath, knowing his next words would destroy his career or save the galaxy. Possibly both. We ask Earth for help. The chamber exploded in outrage. Delegates from 100 species rose to their feet, screaming denials and accusations. Veda slammed her ceremonial staff against the floor, demanding order. Absolutely not, she declared once the noise subsided. The quarantine decree stands. Humanity was banished for threatening galactic peace. We will not grant them legitimacy simply because we face a challenge. A challenge. Kess pulled up a projection showing the Devourers' advance. At current rates, they'll reach the core worlds in 6 months. In a year, they'll have consumed half the galaxy. This isn't a challenge. It's extinction. Commander Lisa Park, one of the few humans allowed to remain in council space by renouncing her citizenship, stood from the observer section. She wasn't supposed to speak, but desperation made her bold. The council made a mistake 200 years ago, she said. I've lived my entire life proving I'm not like other humans, proving I can be civilized, proving I deserve to exist among you. But right now, I don't care about any of that. My family is still in Sol System. 300 billion people who might be our only hope. And you're letting pride kill us all. Security, remove her. Veda ordered Point 2 guards move forward, but Kess stepped between them. She's right. I've fought beside human soldiers. I've studied their tactical doctrine. They're aggressive, yes. Unpredictable, absolutely. But they're also the best problem solvers I've ever encountered. If anyone can find a weakness in this swarm, it's them. And if we lift the quarantine, Veda countered, what's to stop them from turning their weapons on us? What's the point of surviving the Devourers if there's no galaxy left to control? Kess shot back. At least humans only threatened your pride. This enemy threatens existence itself. The debate raged for hours. Species aligned along old alliance networks. Some supported contact with Earth. More opposed it. But as fresh reports arrived showing 3 more worlds falling to the swarm, the opposition began to crack. Finally, a compromise emerged. A small diplomatic vessel would approach Sol System. No military escort. No demands. Just a request for assistance and an offer of negotiation. If they refuse, Veda warned, we never speak of this again. Agreed, Kess replied, though he suspected that if Earth refused, there wouldn't be anyone left to speak of anything. The vessel was prepared within hours. Kess volunteered to lead the mission personally, along with a small crew, including specialist Nara, a Pell engineer who had worked with human colonists before the quarantine that as their ship approached the boundary of Sol System. Kess studied everything intelligence had on humanity. 2 centuries of isolation. No contact, no trade, no indication of what they had been doing all this time. The Saturn shield blocked all scans, revealing nothing. Beginning broadcast on all frequencies, Nara reported. Message repeating in every human language on file. They waited. Minutes stretched into hours. The void offered no response. Then, finally, a single word appeared on their communication screen. Coordinates. Nara input the provided location, and the ship's autopilot engaged. They were being guided through the shield by automated systems. Whatever waited on the other side, humanity was choosing to reveal it. Marshal, Nara said quietly, I'm detecting massive energy signatures beyond the shield. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Ships? I don't know. The readings don't match anything in our database. Kess straightened his uniform and prepared to see what 2 centuries of isolation had created. The galaxy had abandoned humanity to silence and darkness. Now it needed them to answer. The Saturn shield parted like a curtain being drawn back. Kess gripped his command chair as the viewport filled with something that defied comprehension. Where planetary rings should have been, geometric structures surrounded the gas giant in perfect mathematical harmony. Each piece connected to the next, forming a web of defensive platforms that stretched across millions of kilometers. By the ancestors, Nara whispered. That's not a shield. It's a fortress. Their small vessel glided through predetermined pathways, guided by systems that didn't bother communicating. Kess watched as they passed close to one of the platforms. It was larger than his homeworld's capital city, bristling with weapon batteries that tracked their movement with cold precision. Mars appeared ahead, but the red planet Kess remembered from ancient records was gone. In its place, a gray sphere wrapped in construction frameworks held thousands of vessels in various stages of completion. Some were small, barely Corvette-sized. Others dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. Marshal, I'm reading power signatures from those ships that shouldn't be possible. The energy output alone would require a star to fuel. They've had 200 years, Kess replied quietly. 200 years with nothing to do but prepare for the day we came back. Venus passed below them, transformed into what looked like a massive refinery. Jupiter's moons had been hollowed out and converted into storage facilities. Even the asteroid belt had been organized, sorted, cataloged. Nothing wasted. Everything purposeful. And Earth, their final destination, sat wrapped in concentric rings of platforms similar to Saturn's. The planet itself looked almost unchanged from images 2 centuries old, but the space around it hummed with defensive power that made Kess's tactical instincts scream warnings. Approach vector to Europa Station, their automated guide announced. Docking in 15 minutes. Europa had been an ice moon, Kess recalled. Now, it hosted a station that could have held the entire Galactic Council with room to spare. Their vessel settled into a receiving bay where artificial gravity pulled them down with perfect Earth-standard force. An honor guard waited in the corridor beyond. They wore uniforms of dark blue with rank insignias Kess didn't recognize. No weapons visible, but their bearings suggested they didn't need them. A woman approached, her posture straight and her gray eyes sharp. She appeared to be in her 50s, with dark skin and silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Hi, Marshal Kess. I'm Admiral Grace Liu, commander of Seoul Defense Forces. Welcome to Europa Station. Kess offered the traditional Torvan greeting, which Liu returned with practiced ease. You speak our language. We speak 47 languages fluently, including the 6 that have evolved since the quarantine. Liu gestured down the corridor. Please follow me. We've prepared quarters for your crew and a briefing room for our discussion. The station interior matched its exterior in scale and purpose. Everything clean, everything efficient. Crew members moved with quiet confidence, not sparing the alien visitors more than a curious glance. Secretary Owen Blake met them in the briefing room, a round-faced man with an easy smile that didn't reach his eyes. Marshal Kess, Specialist Nara, thank you for coming. I understand the Council's desperation must be considerable to risk contact after so long. Direct. Kess appreciated that. The Devourers are consuming our colonies at an accelerating rate. Our combined fleet cannot stop them. We're here to request assistance. Request, Liu repeated, settling into a chair. Interesting choice of words. Not demand, not command. Request. We have no authority over Earth, Kess admitted. The quarantine made that clear. Blake pulled up a holographic display showing galactic maps. We've been monitoring the Devourers' progress. Our long-range arrays detected them 3 weeks before they entered Council space. We've been tracking their movements, analyzing their tactics, studying their composition. Then you know how dangerous they are. We know exactly how dangerous they are, Liu said. We also know how dangerous the Council considered us 200 years ago. Tell me, Marshal, why should we help the very species that locked us away? Nara spoke up for the first time. Because innocent people are dying. Because entire civilizations that had nothing to do with the quarantine are being erased. Because it's the right thing to do. Liu's expression softened slightly. Specialist, I appreciate your moral clarity. But humanity learned some hard lessons about what happens when we do the right thing for people who fear us. Blake activated another display, this one showing images Kess recognized with horror. Human colonists being forcibly removed from settlements. Human children separated from alien friends. Human-owned businesses destroyed by mobs. All of it happening in the years following the quarantine. The Council didn't just banish Earth. Blake explained quietly. Your member species turn on the humans who stay behind. Some are killed. Most were driven into isolation. A few survived by completely rejecting their heritage. I didn't know, Kess said honestly. Of course you didn't. It wasn't newsworthy. Just a few million individuals paying the price for their species' crimes. Lou stood and walked to the viewport showing Earth below. We watched. We recorded everything. And we remembered. The silence stretched until Kess finally said, "So you'll let the galaxy burn?" "No." Lou turned back to face him. "We're not doing this for the Council. We're not doing it for the species that persecuted our people. We're doing it because the Devourers won't stop at Council borders. They'll come for Sol eventually. And we're doing it because protecting others, even those who wronged us, is what separates us from the machines currently eating your worlds." Blake added, "But there will be conditions. Full reinstatement into galactic society. Reparations for the families affected by post-quarantine violence. Equal representation in Council decisions. And most importantly, acknowledgement of what was done to us." Kess nodded slowly. "I can recommend these terms to the Council." "See that you do," Lou said, "because we're humanity's second chance to prove we belong among the stars. But we're also the Council's last chance at survival. Make sure they understand which one matters more right now." 12 ships emerged from the Saturn shield, and across the galaxy, sensor operators questioned their equipment. Each vessel measured over 3 kilometers in length, shaped like angular blades designed to cut through space itself. They moved in perfect formation, accelerating to speeds that should have torn apart anything made of conventional matter. High Marshal Kess watched from his flagship as the human fleet approached the rendezvous coordinates. His tactical board showed the first fleet of Sol Defense forces in crisp detail, and every reading made his skin crawl with a mixture of awe and fear. "Their smallest escort craft has more firepower than our heavy cruisers," his weapons officer reported. "And I'm detecting energy signatures that don't correspond to any known technology. Quantum displacement drives," Admiral Liu explained over the open channel. "We don't move through space. We convince space to move around us." The Council fleet had been fighting a losing retreat for 6 weeks. 300 ships reduced to half that number through constant skirmishing with Devourer Vanguard elements. Kess had chosen the Crix Nebula as a defensive position because the dense stellar matter would limit the enemy's mobility advantage. It hadn't worked. Nothing worked against the Devourers. Until now. "Enemy contact bearing 27 Mark 8, the sensor operator announced. "Count is, sir, I'm reading over 4,000 individual units." The swarm emerged from the nebula's far edge, their chitinous hulls gleaming in the radiation of nearby stars. They moved with insectal precision, coordinating through some kind of hive intelligence that allowed them to act as a single organism. "All Council vessels, fall back to secondary positions," Kess ordered. "Human fleet, you have operational command." "Acknowledged." A new voice came through, younger than Lou's, but with the same edge of absolute confidence. "This is Captain Roy Chun commanding the Defiant. All units, execute Delta 7. The human ships split into 4 groups of 3, each taking a different vector into the nebula. The Devourers, sensing new prey, adjusted their formation to pursue. They're dividing their force," Kess noted. "Bold strategy. Watch what happens next," Lou said from her position aboard the flagship. The first human group, led by Chin's Defiant, plunged deep into the nebula's densest region. Devourer units followed, their shields adapting to the increased radiation. Then the human ships did something impossible. They fired on the nebula itself. Massive beams of focused energy struck pockets of volatile gas, triggering a cascade of reactions. Explosions bloomed throughout the sector, each one precisely calculated to funnel the enemy into specific kill zones. The Devourers tried to scatter, But the human ships were already there, weapons hammering the confused swarm from unexpected angles. They're using the environment as a weapon, Kess breathed. And they're predicting the swarm's movements before it makes them. The Devourer Collective adapted quickly, as it always did. Shields rotated frequencies. Formation pattern shifted. But the human fleet shifted faster. Every time the swarm found a counter-strategy, the humans had already moved to the next phase. The young officer aboard the Defiant, Ensign Mira Stone, monitored the tactical situation from her station. This was her first real combat, and her hands trembled despite her training. She had been born 50 years after the quarantine, raised on stories of humanity's exile and the promise of eventual redemption. Ensign Stone, redirect forward batteries to sectors 9 and 14. Chun ordered calmly. Sir, those sectors are empty. They will be occupied in 40 seconds. The swarm is learning our pattern. Time to teach them a new one. Mira adjusted the targeting solutions and watched as Devourer elements moved exactly where Chin predicted. The weapons fired, catching the enemy in a crossfire that shredded dozens of units. How did you know? She asked. We've been studying hive mind opponents for 150 years, Chin replied. The Council fought species, nations, individuals. We prepared for something that thinks as one, but moves as many. Every simulation, every war game, every strategic exercise focused on this exact threat. The battle raged for 3 hours. Council vessels contributed where they could, but mostly they watched humanity demonstrate a level of coordinated warfare that shouldn't have been possible. The human ships fought like a swarm against a swarm, each unit independent, yet perfectly synchronized. When the last Devourer unit exploded, the tactical display showed the damage. The human fleet had lost no vessels. Minor damage to 6 ships. The Council fleet had lost another 40 ships, just trying to keep up and not get caught in the crossfire. All units, form up on Rally Point Sigma, Chin ordered. Damage control teams begin assessment. Kess opened a private channel to Liu. Admiral, that was the most effective military operation I've witnessed in 40 years of service. It was adequate, Liu replied. We destroyed this vanguard element, but the main swarm is still advancing on your core worlds. This was just practice. Practice. Kess tried to keep the shock from his voice. We needed to confirm our theories about their tactical adaptation. Now we know their limitations. Liu's tone shifted slightly. Marshal, you should know something. After the quarantine, humanity spent decades debating what kind of military we should build. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted defense. A few wanted to just forget the galaxy existed. What won? Preparation. We built everything we need to defend ourselves against every possible threat, including the Council itself. She paused. When we designed these ships and weapons, we weren't thinking about the Devourers. We were thinking about you, about the species that feared us so much they locked us away. Kess felt ice in his veins. And now we're using those weapons to save you instead. Ironic, isn't it? Liu's voice carried no satisfaction, only cold fact. We built everything we need to prove the Council right about how dangerous we are. And instead, we're proving that danger was exactly what you needed all along. The human fleet regrouped, battle-scarred but unbroken, ready for whatever came next. And Kess finally understood what 200 years of isolation had created. Not just weapons or ships or tactics. They had forged humanity into the galaxy's sword. 6 months of warfare had pushed the Devourers back to a single staging system. The combined fleet of Council and human forces surrounded the last concentration of enemy units, preparing for a final assault that would end the invasion or doom them all. But in the Council chambers, a different battle was taking shape. Admiral Liu sat in her quarters aboard the flagship, reviewing intercepted communications with growing fury. The Council politicians, sensing victory within reach, had begun discussing what they called the post-war settlement. Translation: how to manage Earth after the crisis ended. They want us to return to a modified quarantine, Secretary Blake explained over the secure channel. Limited contact, trade restrictions, permanent observer status instead of full Council membership. After everything we've done, after every life we've saved. Lou closed her eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. Schedule an emergency meeting. Include Marshal Kess. It's time to make something clear. The meeting convened aboard a neutral station. Lou arrived with Blake, facing Chancellor Prime Veta and her senior advisors. Kess stood between them, his expression carefully neutral. Admiral Lou, your presence in this discussion is premature, Veta began. The Council has not yet finalized its position regarding Earth's future status. Then allow me to finalize it for you, Lou said, placing a data chip on the table. That contains complete records of your private discussions over the past month. I particularly enjoyed the part where you debated whether to claim human technology as spoils of war, since we're technically still under quarantine. The Salvari leader's skin shifted through several colors. You've been spying on Council communications? We've been monitoring galactic communications since the day you locked us away. How else would we know when you needed saving? Lou leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. Earth receives full Council membership with equal voting rights. Reparations of 10 trillion credits distributed to human families affected by post-quarantine persecution. And a formal apology acknowledging that the quarantine was unjust. Impossible vita snaped. The Council will never agree to such terms. Then Earth withdraws immediately. Lou stood. We'll destroy the staging system ourselves, and you can face whatever comes next on your own. You're bluffing. You wouldn't abandon the galaxy to the devourers. Try me. Lou's voice could have frozen hydrogen. We survived 2 centuries alone. We can survive whatever comes after. Can you? Secretary Blake added, his friendly demeanor gone. The Chancellor seems to forget that we didn't ask to be exiled. We didn't ask to be persecuted. We didn't ask for any of this. Yet here we are, spending human lives to save species that considered us too dangerous to exist near them. He pulled up holographic images. These are the colonists who died in the riots following the quarantine. These are the children separated from their alien friends because they carried human DNA. These are the families destroyed because the galaxy decided we were monsters. Kess had remained silent during the exchange, but now he stood. I've fought beside human soldiers for 6 months. I've watched them sacrifice themselves to save worlds they'd never seen, defending species that would have let them die. And I've listened to Council members discuss how to control them, as if they were possessions rather than people. Marshal, your loyalty to the Council, my loyalty is to survival, Kess interrupted, and to justice. The quarantine was fear disguised as policy. We made humanity into criminals for the crime of being different, for being better at warfare than we were comfortable with. He looked directly at Veta. I'm voting with Earth. If they leave, the Council deserves whatever happens next. The room fell silent. Veta's political calculation was visible on her face. Support was already fragile. Losing Kess, one of the most respected military leaders in the Council, would shatter it completely. I need to consult with the full Council, she said finally. You have 24 hours, Lou replied. After that, we launched the final assault with or without a deal. The Council debated through the night. Species aligned and realigned. Old alliances fractured. New ones formed. But as dawn broke on the station's artificial clock, the vote came through. Full membership. Reparations. Formal apology. Not unanimous, but enough. Lou addressed the Council one final time before the assault. We're not doing this because we've forgiven you. We haven't. We're doing this because protecting others is in our nature, even when those others wronged us. But if you ever try to cage us again, you'll discover exactly how dangerous we can be. The combined fleet moved on the staging system with overwhelming force. Human ships led the assault, their weapons tearing through devourer defenses. But Lou had held one weapon in reserve for this moment. Deploy the Cascade Drive, she ordered. The device activated, generating a wave of energy that disrupted quantum entanglement across an entire star system. The Devourer hive mind, which relied on instantaneous communication between units, shattered into millions of individual pieces. Each unit suddenly alone, confused, unable to coordinate. The fleet moved through them like a scythe through wheat. When the last enemy unit fell silent, The galaxy's first silence in months felt deafening. Billions of lives saved, hundreds of worlds preserved. The Devourers scattered to deep space, no longer a collective threat. The treaty signing occurred aboard the rebuilt Grand Assembly. Earth's delegation included descendants of the original exiles, now returning as equals. Admiral Liu and Secretary Blake stood with heads high as Chancellor Prime Veta formally apologized on behalf of the Council. Kess approached Liu afterward. You could have demanded leadership of the Council. After what you've done, most species would support it. We don't want to rule the galaxy, Liu replied. We just want to be part of it. To trade, explore, learn, and yes, defend when needed. That's all we ever wanted. She looked out at Earth's new colony ships preparing for launch, welcomed this time instead of expelled. The Saturn shield was coming down piece by piece, humanity opening to the stars once more. They tried to cage us, she said quietly. We turned the cage into a fortress, and when they needed us most, we didn't hesitate. Not because we forgave them, but because protecting others is what we do. That's what it means to be human.